In mid-June, Chinese Premier Li Qiang visited New Zealand and Australia, bringing the gift of offering one-way visa-free travel. This news has sparked concerns. Reports from New Zealand say that CCP spies have been infiltrating the country for decades, conducting cross-border abductions. Easing restrictions for New Zealanders traveling to China increases their risk of never returning. Meanwhile, recent polls in Australia show that over 70% of Australians do not trust China. The Chinese government is trying to encourage foreigners to visit China, but the country's lack of safety is making them think twice. On June 10th, a horrific murder occurred in Beishan Park in Jilin City, Jilin Province. 4 American scholars enjoying a leisurely walk were suddenly attacked by a man with a knife. A bystander who tried to intervene was also stabbed. Although the victims survived after emergency treatment, the bloody scenes video went viral online, drawing significant attention from both domestic and international media. U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns immediately expressed his outrage, tweeting, "I am furious and deeply disturbed by the stabbing of 3 American citizens and a non-citizen resident of Iowa in Jilin, China." The message was viewed by over 660,000 readers. Stabbing American scholars is no small matter, and the chain reaction it could cause is unpredictable. The Chinese side was instantly on edge, but they didn't stray from their typical CCP diplomatic rhetoric. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian emphasized at a regular press conference, China is widely recognized as one of the safest countries in the world. China has always and will continue to take effective measures to ensure the safety of all foreigners in China. This isolated incident will not affect the normal cultural exchange between China and the U.S. Lin Jian's remarks sparked a backlash. There was no apology, no condolences, no promises to fix the issue, just praise for China being the safest country, as if the crime scene wasn't even in China. Lin Jian's remarks ignited a firestorm of public criticism. After the attack, related topics were immediately censored and blocked on the Chinese internet. Searching for terms like Jilin murder or Jilin Beishan Park foreigners would prompt a message saying, according to relevant laws, regulations, and policies, the content of this topic is not displayed. In the CCP's mindset, if it doesn't exist online, it didn't happen, making China appear as the safest country. But this time, the victims were foreigners, especially Americans, making it nearly impossible to cover up the incident completely. Is China really one of the safest countries in the world? Most people would consider that a joke, a blatant lie. But if you understand the CCP's usual thinking, it actually makes some twisted sense. First, the CCP sees itself as the most sacred and correct thing in the world. Once the CCP decides on something, it must be universally acknowledged. Secondly, while murders are rampant within China, those targeting foreigners are indeed rare. Hence, the claim of safest applies to foreigners, as Chinese citizens don't count as people in this context. Even if murder rates soar, public opinion won't stir, so there's no safety issue. The incident took place in a famous tourist spot known for its beautiful scenery, renowned temple, and a lake reflecting green peaks. In summer, lotus flowers bloom, spreading fragrance throughout the park. For hundreds of years, it's been a popular spot for spring outings, lotus viewings, and snow watching. 4 American professors from Cornell University were stabbed in such a picturesque place in broad daylight, and the assailant escaped. Calling this the safest is beyond exaggerated. Among the injured was David Zabner, the brother of Iowa Congressman Adam Zabner. The U.S. Embassy is arranging for the injured Americans to leave China and return home safely. The U.S. authorities have reason to be concerned, especially as U.S.-China tensions are escalating. On one hand, China is trying to develop civilian exchanges to improve U.S.-China relations, while on the other hand, it's directing domestic dissatisfaction toward the West, making foreigners scapegoats. Americans and other foreigners could become future targets. Last November, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced at a welcome banquet after the Biden-Xi meeting that China would invite 50,000 American youths to China for exchanges and studies over the next 5 years to expand people-to-people ties, especially among the younger generation. Back in the day, CCP leader Mao Zedong used ping-pong diplomacy to break U.S. resistance against the communist regime. Now Xi Jinping Qiang is trying a similar approach, hoping American youth will soften U.S. hostility towards China by experiencing China's positive stories. But the Chinese people don't understand Xi's efforts. They only see attacking Americans or other foreigners as patriotic acts and the best way to vent their frustration. After Li Qiang claimed that the police were hunting for the suspect, the Jilin City Police issued a statement saying the attacker was apprehended. The suspect, a 55-year-old man surnamed Cui, reportedly stabbed the foreigners and a Chinese bystander after bumping into one of them in Beishan Park. Li Qiang emphasized that this isolated incident would not affect the normal cultural exchange between China and the US. So, bumping into someone on the street is reasonable justification for multiple stabbings. There's got to be more to it. At the very least, you'd expect it to be a robbery or something. But this kind of reasoning is all too common in China, where daily public violence over trivial matters is just par for the course. The Chinese police only mentioned that the man was unemployed, but they haven't claimed he's mentally ill, a designation almost every suspect in similar attacks is given. Of course, if the government needs it, he'll soon be declared mentally ill, whether he is or not. In over 70 years of CCP rule, people living at the bottom rung of society have existed without hope or dignity. Their pent-up frustration and resentment pervade all public spaces across China. Anywhere there are people, this suppressed anger can explode into violence, leading to constant social revenge incidents nationwide, with countless innocents suffering as a result. To downplay domestic tensions, the CCP uses this pent-up anger and frustration as a tool. They direct the anger of those downtrodden masses toward an external target, all in the name of patriotism. After all, under the CCP's brainwashing education, Chinese people lack independent thinking skills. Extreme nationalism runs through their veins. They are easily duped and manipulated by the party's propaganda, and they temporarily forget their own suffering. The CCP constantly tells its people that China's social issues are caused by hostile international forces. One claim is the US has an unrelenting desire to destroy China, and Japan and South Korea are helping the US destabilize Chinese society. So, under the CCP's guidance, waves of anti-American, anti-Korean, and anti-Japanese sentiment surge. They attack Western brands in China under the guise of insulting China and targeting foreign journalists claiming they are anti-China, all to cover up the darker side of their own society. In early June, a Thai live streamer named Just Keth visited China and toured many famous sites, including Tiananmen Square. She enthusiastically introduced Beijing's ancient culture on her live stream. But just 12 minutes into the stream, the police surrounded her, demanding she shut down the stream and show her personal documents. According to Just Keth, the police told her she needed to apply for and obtain permission to live stream. They then demanded her passport, took photos of it, and checked her Twitch channel and name. Just Keth noted that even after she made it clear she didn't understand Chinese, one officer continued yelling at her in Chinese. When Just Keth ended her live stream, her chat room was buzzing. Some viewers pointed out that Tiananmen Square is a sensitive area due to the June 4th incident, or Tiananmen Massacre, making it a highly sensitive issue. Others said Just Keth's experience showed how risky it is to raise a camera in front of Tiananmen. In China, any news that doesn't paint China in a positive light touches on state secrets. Reporting on it will get you harassed or arrested by authorities. In 2021, China was hit by devastating floods. Journalists like Matthias Bollinger from Deutsche Welle and Alice Su from the Los Angeles Times were on the streets of Zhengzhou covering the disaster when they were suddenly surrounded and harassed by a group of unidentified men and women. They faced intense questioning, insults, and even physical attacks. According to The Guardian, reporters from BBC, the Los Angeles Times, Deutsche Welle, Al Jazeera, CNN, AFP, and AP all faced varying degrees of harassment and threats during their reporting in China. Their personal information was maliciously spread, and some even received violent or death threats. In China, these sort of events don't happen by chance. Every anti-foreigner movement is orchestrated by the authorities, with the lowest rungs of society often being the main force in these waves of anger. They vent their frustrations through these movements, gaining the tacit approval of the authorities without facing any legal consequences. It's the real-life version of George Orwell's 2 Minutes of Hate in his novel 1984. One of the most absurd forms of xenophobia is the treatment of international brands, often slapped with the insulting China label and subjected to a full-scale boycott by Chinese consumers. In March 2022, Swedish fashion brand H&M issued a statement expressing concerns over allegations of forced labor and religious discrimination against minorities in Xinjiang. That immediately drew the ire of the CCP and fueled the anger of Chinese netizens. The resulting Xinjiang cotton controversy ensnared multiple international brands, including Adidas, Nike, Uniqlo, Zara, and Gap, all of which were boycotted by Chinese consumers. Celebrities had to publicly cut ties with these brands, declaring, "We resolutely oppose any acts that stigmatize China." In recent years, international brands that once held the Chinese market in high regard have found the social environment increasingly hostile to business. Numerous well-known brands have been pulling out of China, including Airbnb, Amazon's Kindle, Selected, H&M's sister brand Monkey, and Nike's running app. Korean brands have been at the center of this massive retreat. The Korean retail giant Lotte, known for its department stores and supermarkets, closed its China headquarters in 2022, shifting its focus to other Asian markets. According to incomplete statistics from Premier Li, since 2022, 21 foreign beauty brands have exited the Chinese market, and 5 group brands have adjusted their China strategies and scaled back their operations. These include Procter & Gamble's skincare brand First Aid Beauty, American budget cosmetic brand ELF, Amore Pacific's Innisfree, and L'Oreal's Maybelline. These brands once flourished in China but ultimately chose to leave this once promising market. Moreover, several international companies have also departed China in recent years, especially after China expanded the definition of espionage in its new anti-espionage law. In 2023, Sony announced the completion of moving its camera production lines out of China, relocating its main factory to Thailand. Mitsubishi Motors officially announced its withdrawal from manufacturing in China. Vanguard Group, the American asset management giant, has officially pulled out of China, dissolving its last team and shutting down its office in China's $4 trillion mutual fund market. Gallup, the American polling and consulting company, announced it's closing its operations in China and moving some projects outside of China. Foreign companies and brands leaving China is just the tip of the iceberg, but the scariest thing for foreigners is the relentless wave of patriotism movements. In 2016, the South China Sea arbitration ruling came out, declaring that under the UNCLOS, China does not have historical rights over the South China Sea's natural resources based on the Nine-Dash Line, and demanded China adhere to international law. This verdict infuriated the CCP, which accused the US of being the mastermind behind the arbitration, sparking a nationwide anti-American movement. Anti-American slogans were everywhere, and the actions got more outrageous by the day. There were young Chinese nationalists smashing their Apple phones publicly, declaring they wouldn't use American goods anymore. Patriotic youths gathered outside KFC, holding banners that read, "You're eating American KFC and losing our ancestors' face." They even told KFC customers, "Eat a pack of fries and a chicken wing is like donating a bullet to the American army." While some thought the KFC boycott was just some online influencer's stupidity, a Beijing independent journalist revealed that the nationwide boycott was sparked by Zhu Jidong. He's the deputy director of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences Center for National Cultural Security and Ideological Construction. Ironically, he posted on Weibo from his iPhone 6 Plus. He urged, "Can you not go to this KFC or McDonald's? This can show the determination and attitude of the Chinese people." It was reported that Zhu Jidong's anti-American call was under the dual directives from the Communist Youth League and the Central Propaganda Department. Meanwhile, Zhang Yunlong, president of Hangzhou Bina Industry, issued a patriotic notice firing any employee who bought an Apple iPhone 7, further fueling the anti-KFC sentiment across multiple cities. Clearly, no matter how ridiculous the anti-American actions were, they always had the party's guidance. In 2016, South Korea agreed to deploy the U.S. THAAD missile system, causing China-South Korea relations to sour drastically. Egged on by the CCP, many Chinese didn't even know what the THAAD system was, but enthusiastically joined the massive boycott against South Korea. Nearly all of Lata's stores in China were wiped out, and South Koreans in China were afraid to even admit their nationality. Among the anti-foreign movements, the anti-Japanese campaigns were the most intense and horrifying. In August 2012, China and Japan clashed over the Diaoyu Islands, sparking anti-Japanese protests in major Chinese cities. In Beijing, protesters waved banners demanding the return of the Diaoyu Islands, Japanese apologies, and the downfall of Japan. Simultaneously, boycott Japanese goods, don't buy Japanese cars became the rallying cry. In Guangzhou, due to the protests, sales at Japanese-owned stores and restaurants in Shenzhen plummeted, and many shops shut down to avoid demonstrations. Protesters smashed nearly 1,000 Japanese cars citywide. The most outrageous incident occurred in Xi'an, where a Chinese woman driving a Japanese car was dragged out and beaten by protesters, resulting in partial paralysis. Bystanders watched coldly, some even filming the brutality. In August 2023, Japan's announcement of discharging nuclear wastewater into the sea once again inflamed anti-Japanese sentiment manipulated by the CCP. Japanese nationals became the targets for the venting rage of China's underprivileged masses, prompting Japanese authorities to urge their citizens in China to stay vigilant and protect themselves. Now, with the Taiwan Strait crisis, trade disputes, and escalating tensions between the CCP and Western nations, China has never been less safe. More and more Chinese are directing their so-called patriotic anger at foreigners. The murder case in Jilin set a chilling precedent. In today's China, the safest move is to not step foot inside. That's all for today's show. We'll see you next time.